welcome to Dateline New Haven on WNHH-FM. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. Well, sometimes headlines have words you recognize in them about what's really making New Haven tick. Yale New Haven hires X number of workers. Seamless Rubber hires this many workers. Louis Lunch, still in business. There's another name that you might not see all the time in headlines, but is becoming just an important a part in our economy, and that's Arvinas. Arvinas has just made its 10th year of doing business in New Haven as a pharmaceutical company, developing new drugs to fight major diseases like cancer, and it is growing fast. It's taking more and more space. They're staying in town, and they're becoming a pillar of the new biotech economy in New Haven. I'd like you to welcome today Sean Cassidy, who's the Chief Financial Officer, and Steve Weiss, who's the Senior Vice President, Chief Human Resources Officer at Arvinas. They came in to tell us about what this hot new company in town is up to and what's going to be up to next. Good morning, gentlemen, and thanks for coming.
Thanks. Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Is it Weiss or Weiss? I'm sorry.
Weiss, you got it.
Weiss, okay.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Anyway, congratulations on, is it too loud still? Okay, I'll turn it down. How's that?
That's still loud.
Still loud, okay. How about now?
Much better.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
10 years in New Haven. And you've been started out in Science Park, correct?
Yeah.
Developing new drugs. You got approval to develop them. You're making advances, got venture capital. And now you're employing, I think, how many hundred employees is it now?
We're coming up on 450.
450 employees and growing.
And growing, right.
And getting new space. So tell us, the drugs you develop are based on a technology. There's a nickname for that technology. It's called PROTAC. It's based on protein degradation. So to those of us who are not scientific research, what does that mean?
So I'm going to hopefully make Craig Cruz proud. So the cell actually has a natural protein disposal system that happens every day, and it's the E3 ligase ubiquitin system. And what that actually does is there are certain E3 ligases that they will degrade certain proteins, and those proteins need to happen for a healthy cell. What we've been able to do is actually hijack that system, and we can now redirect those E3 ligases to the protein targets of interest, and those would be against protein targets that cause diseases such as cancer and neurological diseases. So it's a very powerful technology. Is that what your founder, Craig Cruz, who's a scientist at Yale, is that what his major discovery was, how to manipulate those proteins to attack diseases? That's exactly right.
And based on that, your job then was to turn that into drugs that could save people's lives.
That's actually a great way to think about it. The university setting is a great place for basic research. And Craig's research was paramount in terms of having this new therapeutic modality. What Arvinas was really there to do was to take this university idea and really turn it into a commercial entity where, we've actually, over the 10-year period, I think this is, if it's not the only biotech company, it's one of the very few that have been able to take a technology out of university, and in a 10-year period, in the first two programs that they worked on, which is our estrogen receptor program for ER-positive breast cancer and our androgen receptor program for metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer, and to bring those from the university setting all the way into the clinic in phase 1, successful phase 1 trials for both programs, into phase 2, and now we're actually in phase 3, which is the final testing phase in people before you actually have an approved drug. And our breast cancer program is in 2 phase 3 trials right now, and our prostate cancer program is projected to go into a phase 3 trial at the end of this year.
And I mean, all diseases matter. When I think of breast cancer and I think of prostate cancer, I think of what appear to be 2 of the most common forms. Like they're having all of us get checked, along with, I guess, colon cancer, have all of us, men and women, checked at a pretty early age now to catch that stuff early, right?
That's exactly right. And as you look at Arvinas' programs, they're in the later stages right now, and the whole goal, particularly with the Pfizer relationship with our breast cancer program, is to be able to take those in a late setting and commercialize those first, and then move them up the treatment paradigm, where they may have more impact with a greater number of patients.
So in other words, if I understand correctly, where you're going to be stepping into a huge void now is when breast cancer or prostate cancer gets further down, grows worse. That's often the hardest time. I mean, a lot of people say, how much longer do I have to live, doc? And you're saying that with these drugs, more people who get that late stage cancer are going to be able to survive. That's kind of the idea.
That's exactly right.
And you said you spent a lot of words fast because you know this stuff cold.
Sure.
I'm trying to catch up a little
No
bit,
worries.
and I'm glad you did. You said without castration. Tell me what that meant.
So metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer, right, is the indication for our androgen receptor program. And that's after somebody has already been diagnosed, they've already been castrated, and actually the disease itself is metastasized into other areas of their body.
Oh, so that's when prostate cancer now you're going to catch it. So, because often when cancer spreads, it gets a lot harder to stop it, correct?
That's exactly right.
And how does this do that? By looking at the proteins throughout the body and rewire them, kind of?
I don't know if I'd say it rewires them, but it actually, our particular drug actually attaches to the androgen receptor, and it attaches very well to certain mutations within the androgen receptor that may be driving this metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer. And we actually degrade those proteins in lieu of just inhibiting them. That really is the fundamental technology that came out of Dr. Crew's lab at Yale.
So in other words, that you don't have to worry about them coming back, you wipe them out.
We wipe them out. That's right. That's exactly right. We will wipe out and degrade the androgen receptor. Now, as everybody looks at cancer, there are certain points in time where cancer will find a different protein for itself to grow, and that's how you get resistance mechanisms. But we've actually taken a look at and degraded, certain mutations within the androgen receptor. We do that extremely well, and we expect that to have, really terrific
that's really
benefits to
exciting
patients.
work. I mean, you're going to work every day doing complicated stuff, pushing a rock up the hill. I mean, 10 years, as you pointed out, is fast to get close to stage 3. We don't realize that in the public. We wanted our COVID vaccinations right away, and nobody even paid attention how incredible it was that in less than a year we got that vaccine.
Yeah, there's two things that I look back at my history at Arvinas that were, quite frankly, the most satisfying. It wasn't the IPO. It wasn't the big deal that we did with Pfizer. It was the first time that we actually had a picture of a tumor of our first prostate cancer, but not our first prostate cancer, but a prostate cancer patient in a phase 1 trial, where it was crystal clear that he had a resist response. That was the first thing, and that was really pretty early on in our phase 1 trial. That was back in 2019,
where you could see a human being's affected, and you could see something working.
You can, and then there was a second time, and it's we were able to actually this particular patient. Sent us a video. I'm guessing he was in Florida fishing on his boat. And this was the first time he was able to actually get out back on the water after being on other therapies. And, for whatever reason, he was actually doing really well on our prostate cancer drug, and had a terrific video of himself out there fishing with a series of dolphins diving in front of his boat. And when you look at those types of things, those are the things that really, quite frankly, get you back into work.
That's why you do it
with some passion every day. Yeah, those are the extra special stuff. You got to do everything else well, right? You got to run the company. You got to raise money. Steve's got to hire people. Everything else has to come together too. But there's certain things like that really, quite frankly, do get you up out of bed every morning and say it's time to go to work, and it's a great place to be.
So it sounds like have some people had cancer in remission because they've participated in your trials? Sounds like you had the example of the guy in the boat in Florida.
Yeah,
like you're already if not saving lives,
definitely.
Lives.
There's a lot of clinical benefit that's happening with both our prostate and our breast cancer.
And just to review, so Arvinas has so far been developing 2 drugs, one for breast cancer, one for prostate cancer. Well, based on this technology.
Well, those are our most advanced programs. We have many other programs.
Oh, you are looking at others,
we have. Yes, and if you look at our research group, that'd be the stuff that's not in the clinic yet. And we have a big investment in research. Directionally, about 75% of our research goes into oncology, and about 25% of it goes into neuroscience. So we actually have a pretty big neuroscience.
So we're not just talking about cancer.
We are not, no. We actually have a program that we have nominated a clinical candidate for, which is, an early stage process right before you go into the clinic. For LRRK2, which is the protein itself, and that'll be for Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
So
because we said neuroscience, that's another big thing happening in New Haven. We have the Neuroscience Center, the Sci Center set up at Yale for the research, and we have Yale New Haven's Neuroscience Center under construction off George Street, where we're going to be doing heavy-duty experimentation with drugs and in-depth treatment of people. Are you guys linked up with any of that now with this 25%?
No. Right now, what I quoted, the 25% is all our internal research, and I'm sure in the future that we will be hooked up with those centers, particularly once those programs get into the clinic.
You're listening to Sean Cassidy and soon Steve Weiss, who are executives at Arvinas. This is one of the fast-growing, kind of exciting new leaders of the local economy, our biotech economy. They're developing cancer-fighting drugs, and now I just learned today neuroscience-related research as well. And they're on the move. So, Steve, how long have you been with the company?
I've been with the company now for just over 5 years.
And your job is hiring the people?
It's hiring people, amongst other things. Hiring people has been the big kind of ask for us over the last few years because we've been growing so aggressively. Just in the last year, we've hired over 150 people. So
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's all about what Sean just described. I would absolutely add on to that. I think people are attracted to the passion that we have for going after some of these devastating diseases.
I'm going to ask you to get a little closer to the mic, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you. And I think that's a huge driver for everybody that's part of the
And,
organization.
we hear a lot about the challenge of hiring, right?
Absolutely.
And getting earlier in the pipeline, getting people who could take these jobs. Sean mentioned in passing the Pfizer deal. Was Pfizer coming in as a funder and partner in developing some of these drugs?
Yeah, I mean, that was specifically to our breast cancer drug, the
And that obviously gave you a lot more capital workers so you could hire more people.
Sure, absolutely.
And as you've been growing, have you been hiring researchers? What kind of people you've been
We've
hiring?
been across the board. I mean, as Sean described, we started out as a research organization many years ago. We've since kind of transitioned into a development organization, and soon to hopefully be a commercial organization.
Right, so you haven't had to hire sales and marketing yet?
Not just yet, but we've started to build a leadership team there. So, yes, we have started, actually.
I know we always think of Alexion. It was the first big one to hit in New
Yep.
Haven, and their name is on the tower now. Are you guys kind of like the next? Do you see guys say it was the next Alexion? Or?
Well, that's a good success story, so that would be a good one to follow. But I think we consider ourselves to be different space. And
tell me
different
about the
organizations.
challenges of hiring right now. What's it take to hire 150 people in a year right now? Because, the job market's been a buyer's market, which I don't think is such a terrible thing, but makes it more for you guys to have to sweeten the pot,
and it's hiring really good people. I mean, that's the challenge, right? I think we've been incredibly successful at it, but you do have to, look and talk to a lot of people and really kind of hone in on the folks. Who
I
would be a
heard your
good fit for
CEO
us.
talking when you did a promotional event at Bar. He was talking about how people wanted to be in New Haven, and this was not a story we used to hear.
Yeah.
When Science Park, which is where Craig Cruz's research, I guess, hatched the company, when it was founded, the idea was that Yale's research would finally be commercialized. There had been a culture against that until Rick Levin became president in 93. Science Park came. We're going to get your ideas. We're going to make companies out of them. But for the first 10 or 20 years, we'd go meet the people who invented the stuff, and then they moved to San Diego or some other place where there were more workers, or especially Route 128, where a lot more people in that field. Something seems to have pivoted, that in the last 10 years, companies like yours are deciding to stay here. So at that Bar event, they actually talked about the ambiance, that younger workers want to be a place that's kind of fun. You don't have to be Boston, New York, but at least in New Haven, you have fun places to go eat, hang out at night, meet other young people, up to stuff. Is that the real reason? Like, why are you here, and how's that affecting you?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Absolutely. I mean, and that takes time, and it takes an investment, both from institutions locally as well as government institutions that we can partner with to try and do that. I think it's important, and it's built over time.
I mean, is that you're hearing that when you hire people? Is New Haven a plus or a minus, or does it depend on the person?
It's funny you ask. When I started 5 years ago, I would say it was probably more on the neutral side. I just think people didn't necessarily realize what New Haven had to offer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, taken time, I think, to get people kind of around that idea
But it
and
was
experience.
neutral, because it wasn't always neutral.
I don't think so. No, I think you're right.
So even 5 years ago, it was neutral. What's happened now?
It's the success of companies such as Arvinas. It's the success of companies such as BioHaven. It's a success of other smaller companies that are actually coming up in the ecosystem. So I do look at New Haven as one of those up and coming biotech sectors. I wouldn't say we're done yet by any way, shape, or form. We still have critical mass to build. So when you go and you compare, call it a New Haven to a San Francisco or to a Cambridge, it's small in comparison. And there's still investments that need to be made. Companies like Arvinas, we're here for the long haul. We expect to be a New Haven company our entire lifetime. Mm-hmm. But there are things that still can be done. As I look back at some of the state policies that have come up, particularly with this last budget cycle, there was a big ask of our state legislature to just match some of the incentives that New York and Boston have done, and they decided not to do that. And
Tell me what these incentives are.
They're tax credits for research and development. So that was a big disappointment. That's something that I spent a fair amount of time trying to get through the budget cycle, and that was quite frankly shot down.
Was there something specific, a specific research and development tax credit?
There were nothing specific. It was if it was in biotech and it was research and development, and it's a great program that the state of Connecticut has. It just happens to be a very small program where you only can exchange a very small percentage of your research and development dollars to offset some tax credits in the future. Where States of Massachusetts and New York are actually have much richer benefits. So it would be good to see the state respond in that that manner.
It's
At
going
a
to be
minimum,
tough, and this year would be the easiest year to get it because we have that surplus.
you're preaching exactly what I was preaching about
I meant
2 or 3 months ago.
So you were saying, Sean, that in terms of critical mass, why it's needed, is that for attracting enough people to work here? Is it for growing enough of a workforce? Like, how does it affect you to be in an environment where our sector's growing? There's optimism, but as you say, we're not Route 128. We're not Palo Alto. What is the impact?
It's talent. It's really talent. It comes down to talent. Talent attracts capital, right? It attracts a lot of venture capital. It attracts public capital. And it's the talent that you can actually sit there and have an ecosystem where in biotech, it's a risky business at the end of the day. You know, not many are as successful as Arvinas. Some of them only have a 2-year lifespan, and then they, quite frankly, go away. And if there's another company to pick up that talent, that's a fantastic thing. And that's what I mean about building the ecosystem. When you're up in the Cambridge area, there's hundreds of biotech companies, or even more.
I think that's a really important point.
So you're saying the tax credits would have convinced more companies to launch here or stay here? Therefore, there would be more places for the talent to be attracted to because you had more options.
I would agree with that statement 100%. Yes.
Yeah, particularly when you're looking to relocate people, families. They're not going to take that risk unless there are other opportunities available. Recognizing how risky this.
That I never heard before. So if I understand you correctly, part of what you have to tell that family is take a risk on moving here with this exciting new company. If you read the history, you'll know there's a good chance it won't make it, but we have enough other companies here that you'll be able to land. And are you saying, are we still not there yet? Does that come up a lot?
I absolutely think that's part of the calculus that somebody will go through, because if they're familiar with the industry, then they'll know it is a risky enterprise, and they don't always make it. And if there's other options and opportunities available, then they'll want to be available to take care of those.
And you can think of a situation where there's 2 partners, both of them work. One of them has this terrific opportunity at Arvinas, and the other partner may be working at a biotech in Cambridge. And do you really want to split apart? I think that answer typically is no. But if you can convince somebody that there's enough critical mass of companies that they can come down and that other partner would be able to get, another opportunity, it becomes a little bit easier.
How close are we to that?
We need a couple more Arvinases and probably a couple more Biohavens.
And we're talking about that on Dateline New Haven. We're talking to 2 of the executives of Arvinas, Sean Cassidy and Steve Weiss. And their company has sort of hit the jackpot, right? How much money have you raised in venture capital since you started?
Well, it's not just venture. We've raised directionally about $1 billion of equity dollars, and we brought in another, approximately $1 billion of what we call non-dilutive capital, which is really partner-type capital, right? Upfront payments from partners such as Pfizer, Bayer, and others.
And how much did being in New Haven help in addition to have the original researcher Great Cruz? How did being in New Haven help you or not help you grow?
It helped us grow a lot, particularly in the earlier days. I would say it was more of a benefit all the way through probably 2017, 2018, where we were able to really interact with Dr. Cruz and some of his postdocs, as well as hire some of his postdocs that were coming out of his lab. So they didn't have as much of a learning curve as others may have. It was really important in the earlier days for us to have that close connection.
I remember I was telling you the story about, I just remember the stick in your thermometer. This guy, this Russian immigrant, had the first stick in your thermometer, and he had this doll on his desk in Science Park. Said, "This is great. This is what Science Park's all about." It was the early '80s, and then a year later, he was in San Diego to actually make them because, like you're saying, in the early phases, they needed the access to the people who were developing it here, but not when it came to hire people, not when it came to go to market. Yeah. But you're saying you're going to be here for the long haul. Why do you believe you're able to? What makes you think that you'll be able to grow here, continue to grow here?
I would say, we've already grown here, and we've already shown success on that. When you have the excitement around the programs that we have, really big oncology indications, it'll attract the right people. When the programs work out, when the science is sound, you can attract the right people.
I know you talked about how, and I want to blame the couple for not wanting to be split between Cambridge and New Haven. What does surprise me is that some couples, I don't know if they have kids, do the New York New Haven split, and some of them live here, like they live at like 360 State or Corsair. Why is that? I mean, is it a shorter train ride to New York, or New York is just so unlivable compared to Cambridge for some people? I don't know. It's like hard to make it, or the cost of living.
I don't know.
It'd be hard for me to comment on that.
Yeah, I'm sure every situation is very different on how people decide to choose where they live. But I'll tell you, Connecticut has a tremendous number of benefits. When you look at New York, a lot of its cost of living, the education here is fantastic. The train system here is great. The traffic in Fairfield County is a little bit rough, but outside of New Haven, it's not that bad. And you compare that to the traffic up in Cambridge, this should be and is a very attractive place to raise a family. So
I loved raising my family here. Like I've been
So
here
have
over
I.
40
Same here.
years.
Yep.
Yeah. And so what kind of people are you hiring these days? Do you have openings right now?
We do. We continue to hire in our research organization. As I mentioned, we've been building up the development organization as well, so across many different functions there. And on the G&A side, we continue to hire, so it's across the board.
The G&A?
General administrative. So if you're talking
So
about
you're
finance,
continuing to hire
HR,
research,
IT,
you continue to hire finance, you're developing a marketing team or no, sales and marketing or that's
we are
no?
developing a sales, marketing, commercial organization, yes.
And you're also moving, right? So you're going to have 2 locations. You're moving into 3 floors, 160,000 square feet at the 101 College Bioscience Tower. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic development, and it kind of shows some of those things that are going to need some of the critical mass here in New Haven in the future. If you look at the way that building is allocated out, right? We have 3 floors, which is great. Obviously, one of the most successful biotech companies, I believe, here in the city. But Yale's in a piece of that, right? For to kind of have that connection, and then there's also a biolabs component to that, where you really have the ability for true entrepreneurs to rent a lab bench or 2 or 3 over a short period of time to kind of prove out some of their ideas.
And
some
that
of their
goes to your
technology.
point about the ecosystem.
That goes to my
Am I
point about
right?
the
There's not a
ecosystem.
direct, like you're not going to go downstairs in the elevator and meet the person who's now going to do something for your company, but you're going to meet someone who's going to have another successful company, maybe that the spouse of someone you're trying to hire could work for.
That's exactly right.
And what was nervous is that the building is going to be, I don't know if this is just marketing or if it's going to be a big impact. They're going to be bringing high school kids in, right? High school and community college people are going to have labs in that building, if I'm not mistaken,
That's
internships.
part of the I believe that's part of the biolabs.
Okay, not
component
just the
to
entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And are you also still going to be at Science Park? I know your lease is running out there.
We are gonna be at Science Park. Yeah, we're gonna be at 2 location.
And what's
company.
going to be the philosophy behind it? Is one more research, one more development?
Yeah, I would say the Science Park area would be more research driven, and then 101 College would be more development and commercial.
And by development, you're still going to have labs there, right?
The plan is to have labs, absolutely.
So I'm ignorant about this. So if the research is going on at Science Park, when you're developing, you're still going to need to do lab work because you're going to analyze test results, or it's more developing the product?
No, we'll have labs in both locations at some point. But initially, we're going to keep our labs here in New Haven. It's fairly disruptive to shut your lab down for a period of time and then get it up and running at another facility. So we'll have a slow transition into labs over at 101
And
College.
we've grown our footprint significantly in Science Park, so
Right.
we've put a lot of new lab space in there.
9,000 square feet. Are you going to be there long term?
It's
actually
more than
a lot more
9,000
than
square
that.
feet.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you had your lease was
We may have just added
2018 was
9,000.
9645.
Say again?
In 2018, I thought it was 9645.
It may have been in 2018,
And then you
but
grew
it's
a lot since
2023.
then.
Yeah,
So-
we've grown a lot since then. We're probably about 60,000 square feet.
Oh my
We're bu-
goodness. Okay, that's
and
way
we're busting
off.
at the seams.
So what's going to happen to those 60,000 square feet eventually?
Right now, our plan is to keep it.
And that place that also had a delayed realization of a stream in Science Park. Now Twining, the developers come in. They're really building up the housing around
Yeah,
there.
they are.
And those 2 huge housing developments happening right down the block on Munson
Yep.
Street and Henry. What's that going to look like in 5 years? Like, what's Science Park going to be like?
I saw some of Twining's plans, and it looks like it's going to be absolutely beautiful.
I know you looked at one of those like places that's been empty for at least 50 years or so, polluted right up the
Yeah.
hill on Hillside,
Mhm.
and that's going to be like market rate housing. That was a
That's exactly right. We had an old joke at the company. We called that the Freddy Krueger building.
That's a great name for it. I used to live a block away. It definitely felt like Freddy Krueger.
There were times in the earlier days when I actually had time to take a walk around the block at lunchtime, and I'd look in there and I'd be a little bit nervous because it just looked like Freddy Krueger was sitting right around the corner.
And then right tucked in that building, what was the name of the college payments company that went so big, and they built the Google-like company, and then they had the scandal and they went out? What was that?
That's a good
That was
question.
a strike. They were supposed to be the
I
future.
don't recall.
But what struck me about that is sort of like how you guys are really the hoped for tech industry that succeeded, whereas we were trying to chase some other kinds of ones in New Haven to see what would stick against the wall. I mean, do you think, despite the challenges that you're seeing, Sean, do you think that the pharma and the biomedical stuff is going to work long time in New Haven?
I would say it's worked. It already has worked a long time in New Haven. You go back to earlier days that you guys probably don't remember, Neurogen, Curagen, those were
I
also
do.
big. Those are big companies.
Brantford.
Yep, they were around. I think it's always worked. It just still needs to get that critical mass for it to be a hub. I would say it's almost a hub, but it's not quite. It's not quite there yet. It'll be great to see it become a hub one of these days. But you see other companies that were just so successful, like Alexion. I mean, that's one of the most successful biotechs.
And we almost lost them, and then it turned out they went somewhat to Cambridge, but Boston, but they kept them out here.
I think
Kept
at
the
the end of the
presence.
day, that's a good story around critical mass, right? At the end of the day, Alexion got acquired, and that happens with biotech. It happens all the time, and that's actually a good thing.
And they started in Science Park as well.
That's right.
Right, then our
Cheshire,
fear
then
was
moved
they
back.
got the breaks to build that building, and then they were going to ask for the breaks back because then when they got bought out, they moved the executive office to Massachusetts. But then in the end, they decided to keep the labs here, which was the
They
big question that was left here.
That's right.
But we're
And-
glad they kept them.
We're glad they kept them.
Before I go, I want to ask each of you how you got into this work. Sean, you've been 5 years. It sounds like Sean, you've been with Arvinas since the beginning.
Yeah, a little over 10 years.
And what were you doing before that? You mentioned some other.
I was at
company.
another Yale spin-out called Exerion Therapeutics. Before that, I was a chief financial officer at Curagen.
And were
bef-
you always in the finance side of it?
Yeah, usually as a chief financial officer. Before that, 454 Life Sciences, which developed and commercialized the next generation of DNA sequencing machines.
And how did you get into that field?
When I was, I actually started out in public accounting with Deloitte up in the Hartford area. And, as I looked at my career when I was, much younger than I am now, I had a choice to, leave Deloitte and go into what I would call big insurance companies. I use that as a generic term. Or try and, go to companies that are really, out there with products trying to help people. And at the end of the day, what was more satisfying for me was, looking at companies that could potentially really change the lives of people.
Purpose-driven.
It's purpose-driven, yeah.
What was the moment? Were you already interested in biotech, biomedical, or did someone post an ad and you just kind of saw it? You said, "I want to try this out."
Well, when it was okay to do this, one of my clients when I was at Deloitte was Curagen. I helped them go public when I was at Deloitte, and I ended up having a lot of colleagues and friends that actually worked there, and they eventually recruited me to come there, and that's how I ended up there.
And you got the, I always could see that. Even I'm a reporter, you could really feel the excitement people have in the kind of entrepreneurial biotech field. That they really feel like they're taking scientific knowledge, financial knowledge, and doing it in a way that they could see that, you mentioned the video in Florida. You kind of feel like it's for a reason. It's for a point.
It is for a point. It's still a business at the end of the day, but it is for a point. It's got that extra special kick to it.
And you're around people who are kind of like really smart. You got the Craig Cruz type people who are going in the room who are like inventing stuff and figuring out stuff.
We got a lot of smart people.
We do.
Yeah, we do.
And Steve, how did you get in? You said 5 years. What's your background?
Yeah, so prior to Arvinas, I was at another bio company in New Haven. I was there for about 5 years, and then prior to that, I was completely different industries.
What industry
financial
you in?
services. I worked for General Electric, United Technologies, worked for an asset management firm, law firm. So
And
very-
you're always
very
in
different.
human resources and hiring?
Correct, yeah.
And what brought you here?
Actually, I started with the other BioPharma company roughly 10 years ago. Really enjoyed it. And I think what we had talked about and what Sean was reflecting back on was just the connection, I think, that you get with patients, with families, the opportunity to be a part of something really special.
Well, it's interesting that you're in finance and you watched that video of the guy in Florida. Is there a real point when you work at a company list that humorists and finance are also going to be brought into the room to see the
You do.
human impact?
You
You mentioned
have-
you all have a common
you have
mission.
an opportunity to interact with
Absolutely.
patients that suffer from these diseases and talk to their families, and you really hear some just tough stories, and to be a part of potentially addressing that is really, again, something very special. You just don't get that in most industries.
And Steve, so you've had 10 years in this field with human resources and a longer. Did you notice a difference of what kind of people you're attracting or seeking to attract in this field in human resources? And has that changed or evolved over the last 5 years?
I think it's similar, and I think it goes back to that passion. Some of the things we talked about. It's fascinating to me that it's not unusual for a researcher or scientist to be involved with a program or a company, and for an entire career never actually see something make it to the patients in the end as a commercial organization. That to me talks to the dedication and the passion you have to have to be in this industry. You just don't see that many places or
Well,
any other
Arvinas
places.
going strong, helping New Haven go strong. To summarize, you're working 75% of your work on cancer-related drugs based on this technology, roughly 25% in other kinds of drugs. You have 2 ones in 2 later stages of clinical trials. When is the soonest we're going to see a drug in market?
So we've committed externally that we'll actually have a data release around the success of our phase 3 second-line trial. That's the one in partnership with Pfizer around our breast cancer. And if you want to map that out, typically about a year after that, you'll be a commercial organization, although we have been specific on that externally.
But what would be the year we would see you guys?
So that would be 25.
All right, it's not that far away.
Not that far away at all.
All right, keep it up, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for growing in New Haven. We love to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Sean Cassidy, CFO, Steve Weiss, Senior Vice President, Chief Human Resources at Arvinas, one of New Haven's fast-growing major employers. And, thanks for joining us on Dateline New Haven. Thanks to Harry Drost for working the controls. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.